Have you ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly attract wealth, opportunities, and blessings into their lives, while others struggle constantly despite working just as hard, praying just as fervently, and believing just as deeply? What if I told you that the difference has nothing to do with luck, privilege, or even how much you sacrifice, but everything to do with a divine frequency you may not even know you have access to? Right now, in this very moment, something extraordinary is happening in the spiritual realm. This isn't just another video you stumbled upon by chance. Has this ever happened to you? You're scrolling through content, not really looking for anything specific, and suddenly something stops you in your tracks? That's exactly what's happening right now. This is what I call a divine appointment, a moment orchestrated by forces beyond our understanding, where heaven itself is positioning you to receive a transmission that could fundamentally alter the trajectory of your financial and spiritual reality. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. You see, there's a supernatural shift taking place right now, and I'm not speaking metaphorically. I'm talking about an actual energetic realignment that's available to those who are willing to recognize it and step into it. For years, perhaps even decades, you may have found yourself trapped in a cycle of scarcity, working harder, praying longer, hoping desperately that something would change. You've watched others prosper while you've struggled. You've seen doors open for everyone around you while yours remained firmly closed. And you've probably asked yourself more times than you can count, God, when is it going to be my turn? What you're about to discover might surprise you, because the answer to that question is simpler and more profound than you ever imagined. The shift from lack to overflow, from struggle to supernatural supply, isn't something you have to beg for or earn through endless sacrifice. It's already been set in motion. Heaven has already released it. The frequency of abundance, breakthrough, and increase is already broadcasting. The only question is whether you're tuned in to receive it. Stay with me until the end of this message, because what I'm about to share with you isn't theory or wishful thinking. This is about understanding the spiritual laws that govern prosperity, recognizing the divine appointment you're standing in right now, and learning how to align yourself with a flow of abundance that's been waiting for you all along. The transition you've been desperately seeking isn't somewhere in your distant future. It's happening right now, in this present moment, and by the time we're finished here, you're going to understand exactly how to step fully into it. But first, you need to understand something crucial about divine timing and why you're hearing this message today. There's a hidden truth about transformation that most people never grasp, and it has everything to do with the power residing in your own mouth. Think about this for a moment. Every single thing you see around you, every physical reality you experience, started as an invisible thought or spoken word. The chair you're sitting on, the device you're watching this on, the building you're in, all of it existed first as an idea, then as a declaration, and only then did it materialize into physical form. This isn't philosophy. This is the fundamental law of creation itself. Your words aren't just sounds that disappear into the air. They're frequencies, vibrations that travel through unseen dimensions and set forces into motion that you can't perceive with your natural eyes. When you speak something with genuine conviction, with faith behind it, you're not just expressing a hope or a wish. You're actually creating a blueprint in the spiritual realm that physical reality must eventually conform to. This is what I call creative confession, and it's been working in your life, whether you've been conscious of it or not. The question is, have you been creating the reality you want or the reality you fear? Here's where this gets really fascinating, and this is something that might shift your entire perspective on prayer and declaration. There are invisible beings, messengers if you will, that respond specifically to the sound of divine truth being spoken through human lips. I'm talking about angels, spiritual forces that operate in dimensions beyond our five senses. Now, I know some of you might be skeptical about this, but stay with me because what I'm about to explain has been documented across cultures, religions, and spiritual traditions for thousands of years. These beings don't respond to begging or desperation. They respond to authority. They respond to declarations that carry the weight of divine alignment. If this kind of transformational content speaks to you, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'm constantly releasing insights that help you step into your divine authority and activate the abundance that's already assigned to you. When you speak with that kind of authority, when your words align with heaven's frequency, something remarkable happens behind the scenes. Resources that seemed unavailable suddenly become accessible. Doors that were locked for years suddenly swing open. People you need to meet suddenly cross your path. Opportunities that weren't even on your radar suddenly present themselves. This isn't coincidence. This is the direct result of spiritual forces being dispatched on your behalf, rearranging circumstances and orchestrating divine appointments to bring you into alignment with the wealth and abundance that's already been assigned to you. The impact of this revelation cannot be overstated. Most people go through life never understanding that they have this kind of creative power accessible to them. They see themselves as victims of circumstance, powerless to change their financial situation, their relationships, their health. But what if the real journey isn't about struggling harder or sacrificing more? What if it's about making a fundamental decision to shift how you speak, what you declare, and who you believe yourself to be? Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because understanding the mechanics of declaration is one thing, but knowing how to actually activate this divine frequency in your daily life is where the real transformation happens. There's a specific alignment that must take place between your inner world and your outer expression. And once you understand this connection, everything changes. If this is resonating with you right now, write in the comments, "I'm ready for this shift." Let me share something that completely transformed my understanding of prosperity, and it might challenge everything you've been taught about wealth. Most people think abundance is simply about having more money in the bank account, a bigger house, or a nicer car. But that's actually a poverty mindset disguised as ambition. Real wealth, the kind that changes generations and creates lasting impact, operates on an entirely different frequency. It's multidimensional. It encompasses wisdom that helps you make decisions others can't see. It includes favor that opens doors no amount of money could unlock. It manifests as opportunities that find you rather than you having to chase them. It shows up as peace in the midst of chaos, health when others are breaking down, and influence that allows you to shape outcomes in ways that transcend financial transactions. This is what I call heaven's economy, and it functions completely differently from the world's system. In the world's economy, you trade time for money, you compete for limited resources, and you're constantly anxious about scarcity. But in heaven's economy, you become a channel, not a container. You're not just trying to accumulate wealth for yourself. You're positioning yourself as a distribution center where divine abundance flows through you to impact everyone around you. This shift in perspective is absolutely crucial because when you understand this, you stop operating from a place of desperation and start functioning as a conduit for something far greater than personal gain. Here's where most people miss it entirely, and this revelation alone could change the trajectory of your entire life. The way you approach the source of all this abundance matters more than you realize. There are people who come before God as beggars, constantly apologizing for their existence, always asking tentatively as if they're bothering some distant, reluctant deity who might grant their request if they grovel enough. That's not faith, that's fear. That's an orphan mentality, and orphans don't inherit kingdoms. But when you understand who you really are, when you recognize that you're not an outsider hoping to get lucky, but an heir with legal rights to everything in your Father's house, your entire prayer life transforms. You don't come timidly, you come boldly. Not arrogantly, but confidently, knowing that you belong there. Your words stop being desperate pleas and become authoritative declarations. The weight behind what you speak changes because you're no longer speaking from lack, you're speaking from your true identity. And that identity carries destiny within it. Every prayer you utter from that place of sonship or daughtership contains seeds that will inevitably produce the next season of breakthrough in your life. This is the journey from victim to heir, from scarcity consciousness to abundance mentality, from begging to declaring. It's not about working harder or being more religious. It's about recognizing the truth of who you are and what you have access to. Behind the scenes of your visible reality, there's a spiritual inheritance with your name on it, and the moment you step into that identity, everything shifts. The atmosphere around you changes, the opportunities available to you expand, the resources assigned to your destiny begin responding to your voice. What I'm about to show you next builds directly on this foundation because understanding your identity is only the first step. There's a specific alignment that must happen between what you believe internally and what you speak externally. And when these two forces synchronize, you create an unstoppable momentum toward manifestation. If you're beginning to see yourself differently right now, type in the comments, "I receive this truth." Something is shifting right now, in this precise moment, and I need you to feel this rather than just hear it intellectually. There are barriers in your life, financial ceilings you've hit repeatedly, relationship patterns that keep recycling, health limitations that seem permanent, opportunities that always slip away at the last second. And those barriers are not as solid as they appear. In fact, they're breaking right now, not metaphorically, not eventually, right now. There's a divine current flowing toward you, and it's been redirected specifically to intersect with your reality at this exact point in time. The heavens aren't closed above your life. They're opening. Doors that have been locked for years, perhaps even generations in your family line, are beginning to unlock because you're coming into alignment with a frequency that dissolves resistance. Here's what most people don't understand about how the universe actually operates, and this is where science and spirituality converge in the most beautiful way. Everything, and I mean everything, functions according to alignment. Look at the solar system. The sun doesn't struggle to hold the planets in orbit. It doesn't stress or force. The planets naturally align with the gravitational pull because that's the law governing their movement. Consider the ocean tides. They don't randomly flow in chaotic directions. They align perfectly with the moon's gravitational influence, rising and falling in predictable rhythms. The entire cosmos operates on principles of alignment, resonance, and frequency. Your life is no different. Blessings don't flow to you because you're lucky or because you begged hard enough. They flow when you achieve alignment, when your internal state, your spoken words, and your spiritual positioning synchronize with the divine order that governs abundance. This is the hidden truth behind why some people seem to effortlessly attract what others desperately chase. They've discovered, either consciously or unconsciously, how to align their spirit, soul, and words with heaven's operating system. When that alignment happens, resistance dissolves, struggle ceases, the current of provision begins flowing naturally, almost effortlessly, because you've positioned yourself in the right stream. Think about a radio for a moment. All the frequencies are already broadcasting through the air around you right now, music, news, talk shows, but you only hear what you're tuned into. The station doesn't come into existence when you turn the dial. It was already there. You simply aligned your receiver with its frequency. That's exactly what's happening in your life right now. The abundance, the breakthrough, the supernatural increase you've been praying for. It's already broadcasting. It's already been released. The question has never been whether it exists. The question is whether you're aligned to receive it. Most people live their entire lives slightly out of tune, wondering why others can hear the music while they only get static. They're so close to breakthrough, just millimeters away from alignment, but that tiny gap creates massive resistance. It's like trying to push open a door that opens inward. All your effort actually makes it harder. But the moment you understand the mechanics of alignment, everything changes. You stop pushing and start positioning. You stop forcing and start flowing. The journey transforms from exhausting struggle to natural momentum. What I'm about to reveal builds on this foundation because there's a specific practice, a way of speaking and thinking that accelerates this alignment process and locks you into the frequency of abundance permanently. If you're feeling this shift happening in your own life right now, write in the comments, "I'm aligning with abundance." There's a pattern woven into the fabric of creation itself that most people completely overlook. And when you grasp this, it fundamentally alters how you approach every area of your life. Go back to the very beginning, the origin story that transcends all cultures and traditions. When the divine force that created everything wanted to bring worlds into existence, it didn't sweat, struggle, or labor. It spoke, "Let there be light." And light appeared, not through effort, but through utterance. Words carrying intention became material reality. That same creative DNA, that same generative power flows through you right now. You're not some random accident floating through a meaningless universe. You're a creator made in the image of the ultimate creator, and your words carry that same potential for manifestation. This isn't mysticism or wishful thinking. This is understanding the actual mechanics of how reality forms. When you speak with true alignment, when your words aren't just empty sounds, but expressions of divine intention channeled through your consciousness, you're engaging the same creative force that brought galaxies into existence. Your declarations become more than communication. They become commands that the invisible realm must respond to. Most people use their words carelessly, speaking their fears, their doubts, their limitations, never realizing they're literally creating the reality they're trying to escape from. But when you understand this power, everything shifts. You become conscious of every word, every declaration, because you recognize that you're not just talking, you're building. If this resonated with you, show some love by hitting that like button. It helps this message reach more people who are ready for this level of understanding, and I genuinely appreciate you taking that simple step. Here's where this gets really transformative, and this is the key that unlocks everything we've been discussing. There's a bridge between the invisible world, where everything already exists, and the visible world where you experience physical reality. That bridge is alignment. On one side, you have faith, vision, divine promises, unlimited potential, all existing in the realm of the unseen. On the other side, you have manifestation, physical evidence, tangible results, everything you can touch and measure. Most people live on one side or the other. They either get lost in spiritual fantasies that never materialize, or they become so focused on physical reality that they miss the invisible forces shaping it. But the real power lies in building that bridge. Alignment is what connects these two worlds. It's when your confession, what you speak out loud, perfectly matches your mindset, which is what you genuinely believe internally, which then synchronizes with your spiritual posture, meaning who you understand yourself to be at the deepest level. When these three elements come together in perfect harmony, you create an unbreakable bridge. Faith stops being abstract hope and becomes concrete manifestation. The invisible begins transitioning into the visible naturally. inevitably, because you've removed all internal resistance and created a clear pathway. Think about it like this. Behind the scenes of your visible circumstances, there's an entire reality operating that your physical eyes can't perceive. Decisions are being made, resources are being allocated, opportunities are being prepared. But if your internal state is chaotic, if you're speaking abundance while thinking scarcity, declaring victory while feeling defeated, you're actually blocking the bridge. You're creating interference that prevents what already exists in the invisible from crossing over into your physical experience. The impact of understanding this cannot be overstated. Most people's prayers go unanswered, not because God is withholding, but because they've unconsciously blocked the pathway with misalignment. The journey from where you are to where you want to be isn't about adding more effort or saying longer prayers. It's about achieving internal coherence so perfect that the bridge between invisible and visible becomes a superhighway rather than a broken path. What I'm about to share next takes this understanding to an even deeper level, because there's a specific enemy of alignment that sabotages most people without them even recognizing it. If this is clicking for you, write in the comments, "I'm building the bridge." There's a phenomenon I see constantly, and it's absolutely heartbreaking because these are good people, sincere, devoted, earnest in their beliefs, yet they remain stuck in cycles of lack despite doing everything they've been taught to do. They're not failing because they lack faith. That's the shocking part. They actually have tremendous faith. The problem is their faith is misaligned, and misaligned faith creates internal contradiction that sabotages everything. Let me explain what this looks like in real life. Someone stands up in the morning and declares, "I am blessed, I am prosperous, abundance is flowing to me." Those are powerful words, but here's what's happening behind the scenes in their mind. As they're speaking those declarations, a voice inside is simultaneously whispering, "But look at your bank account, but remember what happened last time. But you've never been good with money, but people like you don't get those kinds of breaks." This creates what I call spiritual static. Heaven hears two completely different broadcasts coming from the same person and cannot respond effectively to contradiction. It's like pressing the accelerator and the brake at the same time in your car. You're sending mixed signals to the vehicle, and it responds by essentially going nowhere. The universe operates on clarity, not confusion. Divine forces respond to coherence, not contradiction. When your mouth says one thing but your mind believes another, you've created interference in your own manifestation process. This is the hidden truth behind why so many people pray for years without seeing breakthrough. It's not that their prayers aren't heard, it's that their internal contradictions are creating resistance stronger than their declarations. But when transformation happens, when you finally achieve true internal alignment, something extraordinary occurs. You stop chasing prosperity and start attracting it. There's a magnetic quality that develops when your heart, your mouth, and your actions all begin operating on the same frequency. It's like you become a tuning fork, vibrating at the exact resonance of abundance, and everything matching that frequency naturally moves toward you. Opportunities you weren't even looking for find you. Resources appear from unexpected sources. The right people show up at exactly the right moment. This isn't luck or coincidence. This is the natural result of becoming magnetized to divine prosperity's vibration. Think about how a magnet works. It doesn't chase metal. It doesn't run around trying to convince iron filings to come closer. It simply exists in its natural state of magnetic force, and everything susceptible to that force automatically moves toward it. That's what happens when you achieve complete alignment. Your entire being, thoughts, words, emotions, actions, begins broadcasting a clear, undiluted signal of abundance consciousness. And because the universe is responsive, not random, it begins rearranging circumstances to match your frequency. The impact of this shift is immediate and undeniable. You stop feeling desperate. You stop pushing and forcing. There's an ease that enters your life because you're no longer fighting against your own internal resistance. This is the critical decision point in everyone's journey toward true prosperity. You can keep operating with divided consciousness, declaring one thing while believing another, wondering why nothing changes. Or you can commit to the sometimes uncomfortable process of rooting out every hidden belief, every unconscious pattern, every subtle thought that contradicts what you're declaring. When you make that commitment, when you refuse to tolerate internal contradiction anymore, the magnetization process begins naturally and powerfully. What I'm about to reveal takes this understanding into practical application, because knowing these principles intellectually is one thing, but activating them consistently in your daily reality requires specific practices that most people never discover. If you're ready to eliminate contradiction from your consciousness, write in the comments, "No more mixed signals." Here's something that will completely shift how you view your relationship with reality itself. The universe isn't neutral or indifferent. It's not sitting back passively, waiting to see what happens. Creation is actually responsive, constantly listening, constantly reading the signals you're broadcasting, and constantly adjusting to match the authority you're operating from. But here's the crucial part that changes everything. It only responds to authority that flows from alignment. You can't fake this. You can't manipulate it with techniques or tricks. The universe recognizes authentic alignment the way your body recognizes poison versus nutrition. It knows the difference instantly. When you truly align with heaven's economy, when you start thinking the way divine intelligence thinks, speaking the way creative force speaks, and expecting outcomes the way God expects them, you step into a level of authority that creation must respond to. This means completely rejecting fear of lack. Not just managing it or coping with it, but fundamentally rejecting it as incompatible with your true identity. Fear of lack is not humble or realistic. It's actually an insult to the source of all provision. It's saying, "I know you created galaxies, but I'm not sure you can handle my rent payment." When you recognize how absurd that contradiction is, you naturally begin operating from a completely different paradigm. This brings us to one of the most powerful revelations in all of spiritual understanding, and it's something that ancient texts have been pointing to for thousands of years. There's a specific statement that appears across wisdom traditions, and it's not poetic language or motivational rhetoric, it's actual spiritual law. You shall decree a thing, and it shall be established. Read that again slowly. Not, "it might be established," or "it could possibly happen if conditions are right." It shall be established. That's legislative language. That's the language of law, not suggestion. What this means in practical terms is that when you speak from true alignment, when your words carry the weight of divine authority because you've achieved internal coherence, you're not hoping or wishing. You're legislating. You're establishing spiritual law that physical reality must eventually conform to. Think about how human legislation works. When a law is passed, it doesn't matter if everyone agrees with it or likes it. It's established. Reality adjusts to accommodate it. Courts enforce it. Systems reorganize around it. That's exactly what happens when you decree something from alignment. You're creating structure in the invisible realm that the visible realm has no choice but to eventually manifest. This is why aligned words don't just express intention, they create order automatically. Behind the scenes, forces you can't perceive begin moving. Opportunities that didn't exist suddenly form. Resources that were unavailable become accessible. The architecture of your circumstances literally reorganizes itself to match the decree you've established. Most people think manifestation is about working harder or waiting patiently. But real manifestation is about understanding that you have legislative authority in the spiritual realm. And when you exercise that authority correctly, change becomes inevitable, not hopeful. The transformation that happens when you grasp this goes beyond financial increase or material blessing. Your entire relationship with decision-making shifts. You stop asking permission from circumstances and start commanding outcomes. You stop being a victim of your environment and become the architect of your experience. The impact ripples through every dimension of your life because you've discovered the hidden mechanics of how reality actually forms. What I need to show you now builds directly on this foundation because there's a specific practice that activates this legislative authority and keeps it functioning consistently rather than sporadically. If you're beginning to see yourself as having this kind of authority, write in the comments, "I decree and establish." There's a complete reversal that happens when you step into this level of understanding, and it's so profound that it literally inverts your entire approach to prayer and manifestation. Most people operate from earth trying to reach heaven. They're down here in their limited circumstances, looking up at an infinite God, hoping their small voice somehow penetrates the cosmic distance and gets his attention. That's exhausting. That's why people burn out spiritually. They're constantly pushing upward, striving, begging, trying to convince a reluctant deity to intervene in their earthly mess. But that entire paradigm is backwards. When you achieve true divine alignment, something shifts in your consciousness that changes everything. You stop operating from earth toward heaven and start commanding from heaven toward earth. Let me explain what this means practically. You begin to see yourself not as someone down here hoping heaven notices, but as someone already positioned in heavenly places, looking down at earthly circumstances and speaking divine reality into them. Your prayer transforms from wishful thinking, "I hope this works, I hope God hears me, I hope something changes," into spiritual legislation. You're literally enacting heaven's will in earth's realm. This isn't arrogance. This is understanding your actual position and authority as an heir, as someone who carries divine DNA and has been given dominion. The transformation this creates in your daily experience is remarkable. Decisions that used to paralyze you with fear become clear because you're operating from a higher vantage point. Circumstances that used to control you lose their power because you're no longer subject to them. You're governing them. Behind the scenes, there's a complete reorganization happening in how you relate to reality itself. You're no longer reacting to life. You're creating it, word by word, decree by decree. Now here's where this gets even more nuanced and powerful, because there's a rhythm to how divine provision flows, and when you're truly aligned, you begin sensing it. Most people are completely out of sync with divine timing, which is why they experience so much frustration. They're pushing when they should be pausing. They're forcing when they should be flowing. They're striving when they should be receiving. But when alignment happens, you develop this internal compass, this intuitive sense of divine timing and direction that guides you. With incredible precision, you stop exhausting yourself with constant effort and start synchronizing with the natural rhythm of how heaven releases blessing. This is such a crucial revelation because it completely eliminates striving. Striving is what happens when you're operating from earth consciousness, trying to make things happen through human effort alone. But synchronizing, that's what happens when you're aligned with heaven's frequency. You recognize that every promise already exists, but each promise has a corresponding condition of alignment attached to it. It's not about earning or deserving, it's about positioning. When you align with the specific frequency of what you're calling forth, manifestation becomes inevitable. The timing isn't random or arbitrary. It's responsive to your state of consciousness. Think about a surfer waiting for the perfect wave. They're not creating the wave through effort. They're sensing the rhythm of the ocean, positioning themselves correctly, and then riding the wave that was already coming. That's exactly how divine timing works. The provision, the breakthrough, the opportunity. It's already in motion. Your job isn't to create it through struggle. Your job is to sense its approach and position yourself to receive it through alignment. The impact of this understanding is that you move from anxiety to anticipation, from desperation to expectation. You know something's coming, not because you're hoping blindly, but because you've synchronized with the rhythm of divine release. What I want to reveal next is the specific enemy that blocks most people from sensing this divine timing, keeping them trapped in cycles of perpetual striving without ever breaking through to synchronization. If you're feeling this shift from striving to synchronizing, write in the comments, "I'm flowing with divine timing." There's a perspective shift that changes everything, and it might be the single most liberating revelation you'll encounter on this entire journey. The wealth you're seeking, the abundance you've been praying for, the breakthrough you've been desperately pursuing, it's not hidden from you, as if some cosmic force is playing keep away. It's actually hidden for you, preserved and protected, waiting in a specific location in the invisible realm until your consciousness rises to meet its frequency. This distinction is absolutely critical. When something is hidden from you, you're being denied access. But when something is hidden for you, it's being reserved, set apart specifically for your arrival when you're ready to receive it. Think about buried treasure. It's not hidden from everyone. It's hidden for the person who has the map, who knows where to dig, who has the consciousness to recognize what they're looking for. Your abundance is exactly like that. It exists right now in the spiritual dimension, vibrating at a specific frequency, and the moment your internal state matches that frequency, attraction happens. Automatically. Just like metal doesn't have to convince a magnet to pull it, the magnetic force does that naturally when proximity and alignment occur. Wealth moves toward you effortlessly when you achieve the right frequency. Most people spend their entire lives chasing what's actually already chasing them, but they're vibrating at the wrong frequency to receive it. This is where one of the most famous teachings in spiritual history suddenly makes perfect sense in a way that transcends religion and becomes universal principle. There's this ancient instruction that says to seek first the kingdom and righteousness, and everything else will be added. For years, people interpreted that as some kind of moral directive. Be good enough, religious enough, and maybe God will reward you. But that completely misses the deeper revelation. Seeking the kingdom means seeking alignment. It's about getting your internal world, your consciousness, your frequency into perfect harmony with divine order. That's the kingdom. It's not a place you go when you die. It's a state of consciousness you access right now. And righteousness? That's not about perfection or sinlessness in the moralistic sense. Righteousness is right positioning. It's being in the right place, at the right frequency, aligned with the right principles. When you're rightly positioned, when your consciousness is aligned with abundance, when your mindset matches heaven's economy, when your words and beliefs are synchronized, everything begins flowing effortlessly. You don't have to force doors open because you're standing under the right open heaven. Provision finds you. Opportunities appear. Resources materialize, not through struggle, but through positioning. Behind the scenes of your visible reality, there's a continuous flow of divine supply moving through creation, looking for vessels aligned enough to receive it. Most people position themselves outside that flow through fear-based thinking, scarcity consciousness, and misaligned declarations. But the flow never stops. It's always moving, always available. The transformation happens when you make the decision to reposition yourself, to step out of scarcity frequency and into abundance frequency, to leave behind the mindset that blocks blessing and embrace the consciousness that attracts it. The impact of this repositioning is immediate. You might not see physical changes instantly, but something shifts in the atmosphere around you. The moment you align correctly, doors that were sealed begin loosening. People who need to connect with you start appearing. Ideas that can generate wealth begin downloading into your consciousness. This isn't coincidence. This is what happens when you're finally standing in the right place, positioned correctly under heaven's open supply. What I'm about to share next reveals the specific mindset that keeps most people perpetually mispositioned, and how to break free from it permanently so. Alignment becomes your natural state rather than a temporary experience. If you're ready to reposition yourself for effortless flow, write in the comments, "I'm seeking alignment first." There's a language that heaven responds to instantly, and most people have never learned to speak it fluently. That language is faith, but not faith as most understand it. Not the weak, hopeful, fingers-crossed kind of faith that says, "I really hope this works out." I'm talking about faith that speaks with absolute certainty, the kind that makes declarations as if they're already established facts. This is the language of alignment, and when you master it, your words begin carrying a weight that changes the atmosphere around you. The difference is tangible. When you speak from desperation, your words are light, flimsy, easily dismissed by circumstances. But when you speak from confidence rooted in divine alignment, your words carry authority because heaven itself backs them. Think about how differently these two statements feel. "God, please, if it's your will, maybe you could help me with my finances," versus "I decree supernatural provision is flowing to me now because I'm aligned with heaven's abundance." The first one is begging, the second one is legislating. The first comes from a position of powerlessness, the second comes from understanding your authority. Heaven doesn't respond to begging with the same force it responds to confident decree, because begging indicates you don't truly believe you have access. But decreeing from certainty signals that you understand who you are and what authority has been given to you. Now, this might sound presumptuous or arrogant to people operating from religious mindsets that emphasize human unworthiness, but stay with me because there are historical precedents that prove this principle. Consider the story of Elijah. Here was a man so aligned with divine authority that he stood before kings and declared there would be no rain, except by his word, and creation obeyed him. For 3 years the heavens remained closed because his decree held jurisdiction. Then, when the time was right, he spoke again, and the rains returned. That wasn't magic or special favoritism. That was a human being operating in such complete alignment with divine will that his words carried creative force. Or look at Joshua, who in the midst of battle needed more daylight to complete the victory. He didn't pray a tentative prayer, asking if maybe, possibly the sun could slow down. He commanded it, "Sun, stand still," and the sun obeyed. Not because Joshua was superhuman, but because his alignment with divine purpose gave his words jurisdiction over natural elements. This is the hidden truth that most spiritual teaching completely glosses over. When you're aligned with divine abundance's frequency, your environment must conform to your decrees. Not might conform, must conform. It's spiritual law. Behind the scenes of visible reality, there are governing principles that respond to properly aligned authority the way electricity responds to a switch. When you flip the switch correctly, light appears. Not because you begged the electricity, but because you engaged the system correctly. Your decrees work the same way. When spoken from true alignment, they engage spiritual systems that automatically produce corresponding physical results. The transformation this creates in your daily experience is profound. You stop feeling powerless in the face of circumstances. You recognize that your aligned words actually carry jurisdiction over your environment, your financial environment, your relational environment, your health environment, your opportunity environment. Most people live their entire lives never discovering they have this authority, so they remain victims of whatever circumstances blow their direction. But when you understand that alignment gives you jurisdiction, everything changes. You start speaking to situations instead of just speaking about them. You command outcomes instead of just hoping for them. The impact of this shift ripples through every decision you make because you're operating from a completely different understanding of your place in creation's hierarchy. What I need to reveal next is the specific practice that maintains this level of alignment consistently, because having authority is one thing, but keeping your frequency steady enough to exercise it reliably is where most people struggle. If you're ready to speak with this kind of certainty, write in the comments, "My words carry authority." Here's what separates people who experience occasional breakthrough from those who live in sustained abundance. And it comes down to something most people completely underestimate: discipline over your speech patterns. Alignment isn't something you achieve once and then coast on forever. It requires constant vigilance, continuous monitoring of what comes out of your mouth, because every word you speak is either building or dismantling your alignment. This is where most people sabotage themselves without even realizing it. They'll make powerful declarations in the morning: "I am blessed, I am prosperous, abundance flows to me," and then spend the rest of the day complaining about their lack, speaking their fears, reinforcing the very limitations they're trying to escape. Every time you complain about insufficient funds, you're not just venting, you're actually reinforcing misalignment. You're broadcasting a frequency of scarcity that repels the very abundance you're trying to attract. Every time you speak fear about your future, you're not being realistic. You're reversing the flow of provision that was starting to move toward you. This might sound harsh, but it's the hidden truth that nobody wants to hear. You cannot speak poverty and expect prosperity. You cannot declare lack and attract abundance. The universe doesn't respond to your occasional positive affirmations if they're buried under constant negative declarations. It responds to your dominant frequency, the message you broadcast most consistently. The transformation required here is developing what I call speech discipline. It means becoming conscious of every word before it leaves your mouth. It means catching yourself when you're about to complain and choosing instead to speak what you're believing for rather than what you're currently seeing. This isn't denial of reality. This is creating reality through aligned speech. Behind the scenes, something remarkable happens when you achieve this level of discipline. You begin noticing opportunities you were missing before. Conversations start flowing differently. Decisions become clearer. That's because your words are no longer creating static, they're creating clarity, and clarity attracts manifestation. Now, here's where this gets absolutely fascinating, and it connects to something that ancient wisdom has been teaching for millennia, but modern mindsets have dismissed as mythology. There are invisible messengers, beings operating in dimensions we can't perceive with physical senses, and they have a very specific function. They respond to divine words spoken through human mouths. These are what traditions call angels, and they're not floating around waiting for something to do. They're specifically designed to hearken to God's word. Not human opinion, not emotional venting, God's word. When your declarations echo divine promises, when you speak what heaven has already established, these messengers are activated. They literally begin creating pathways where none existed. They orchestrate encounters between you and people you need to meet. They open doors that human effort alone could never unlock. They release connections that seem coincidental, but are actually divinely orchestrated. This is happening behind the scenes of your visible reality, but only when your speech aligns with heaven's declarations. So, Impact of understanding this is staggering. You realize you're not alone in your pursuit of breakthrough. There are forces working on your behalf, but they only engage when you speak their language, the language of divine truth rather than earthly circumstance. Most people's prayers and declarations never activate angelic assistance because they're speaking human frustration instead of divine promise. They're voicing what they see instead of what God has decreed. But when you shift your speech to consistently echo heaven's perspective, you're essentially giving these messengers their marching orders. You become a distribution point for divine activity in the physical realm, because your words create the legal framework through which invisible help can manifest visible results. What I want to explore next is the specific enemy of this disciplined speech, the internal force that constantly tries to pull you back into fear-based declarations, and how to overcome it permanently. If you're committed to disciplining your speech, write in the comments, "I guard my words." There's a paradigm shift that happens when you truly understand your position in the cosmic hierarchy, and it completely revolutionizes how you approach prayer. Most people have been taught to pray as if they're distant subjects petitioning a faraway king, hoping he's in a good mood, hoping their request might be considered among millions of others. That creates a timid, tentative approach where you're constantly asking, pleading, hoping, never certain, never confident. But that entire framework misses the profound reality of what prayer actually is at its highest level. Prayer isn't begging. It's partnership with divine intelligence. It's recognizing that you're not an outsider trying to get heaven's attention. You're a co-creator, collaborating with creative force itself. When this revelation hits you, everything about your prayer life transforms. You stop asking timidly and start commanding boldly, not from arrogance, but from understanding your rightful place in creation's design. You're not trying to convince God to do something he's reluctant about. You're aligning with what he's already established and then speaking it into physical manifestation. This is what it means to orchestrate life through spiritual alignment. You're not at the mercy of circumstances. You're actively shaping them through aligned declaration. The transformation this creates is immediate. Your prayers stop feeling like desperate attempts and start feeling like creative acts. Behind the scenes, you shift from reactive to generative, from victim to architect. Now, here's the critical element that determines whether this authority actually works in your favor or becomes a source of frustration, and it has everything to do with why you're seeking abundance in the first place. There's a hidden truth that separates people who receive sustained prosperity from those who either never receive it or lose it quickly. After it arrives, God blesses purpose, not greed. That distinction is absolutely crucial. Wealth pursued purely for selfish accumulation, for ego gratification, for material comfort divorced from any larger mission, that kind of wealth becomes a burden even when you get it. It creates anxiety, attracts the wrong people, and ultimately leaves you emptier than you started. But wealth in alignment with purpose, that becomes transformational. It's not just about what you gain, it's about what becomes possible through you. Your prosperity becomes a tool for kingdom impact, for lifting others, for funding visions that extend beyond your personal comfort. This is why the motive behind your desire for abundance matters so profoundly. Heaven doesn't withhold provision because it's stingy. It ensures that resources flow to those who will steward them correctly, who understand that wealth is meant to flow through them, not just to them. When your prosperity desire anchors in kingdom purpose, when you want abundance not just to live better, but to give more, create more, impact more, heaven releases provision freely because you've proven yourself trustworthy. The journey from greed-based wanting to purpose-driven stewardship requires honest self-examination. You have to ask yourself, why do I really want this financial breakthrough? Is it solely for personal comfort, or is there a larger vision attached to it? The impact of getting this alignment right cannot be overstated. When your motives are pure, when your desire for wealth is connected to fulfilling divine assignment, resistance dissolves. Provision flows naturally because you're not fighting against spiritual principles. You're working in harmony with them. Behind the scenes, heaven sees you as a safe investment, someone who won't hoard resources, but will circulate them according to divine purpose. What I need to reveal next addresses the emotional component of alignment, because even with right motives and bold declarations, there's an internal frequency that either amplifies or blocks manifestation, and most people never learn to manage it. If you're ready to align your motives with kingdom purpose, write in the comments, "My wealth serves purpose." There's a beautiful paradox that emerges when you truly step into alignment, and it completely inverts your relationship with wealth. Most people approach abundance from a scarcity-driven mindset, where the goal is accumulation. Get as much as you can. Hold onto it tightly, protect it from loss, build bigger barns to store more for yourself. But alignment does something remarkable to your intention. It purifies it. Suddenly, your focus shifts from getting to giving, from hoarding to distributing, from merely surviving to actively advancing divine agendas that extend far beyond your personal comfort. This transformation isn't forced or manufactured. It happens naturally when you understand that you're designed to be a conduit, not a container. Think about how a river works. It doesn't try to hold all the water to itself. It allows continuous flow, receiving from the source, passing it through, nourishing everything along its path. Always moving, always abundant precisely because it never stops flowing. That's what you become when alignment purifies your intention. Wealth starts flowing through you with remarkable consistency because heaven trusts that you won't dam it up. You'll receive it, steward it, and release it according to divine direction. Behind the scenes, this shift from accumulator to distributor actually increases your capacity to receive because you've proven yourself a trustworthy channel. The impact of this mindset transformation is that anxiety about money dissolves. When you're focused on flowing rather than holding, scarcity loses its grip on your consciousness. Now here's where most people miss a crucial piece of the manifestation puzzle, and it has everything to do with the emotional frequency you're broadcasting. You can say all the right words, make all the correct declarations, have all the proper motives, but if your emotional state contradicts your confession, you're creating interference that blocks manifestation. Your feelings must support what you're speaking. This is where gratitude, joy, and expectancy become absolutely critical. They're not just nice emotions to have. They're actually currencies that fuel the manifestation process. When you thank God in advance for what hasn't manifested yet, you're doing something profound at the frequency level. You're signaling complete alignment and demonstrating belief that transcends physical evidence. Gratitude before manifestation is one of the most powerful frequencies you can emit because it says, "I'm so certain this is already done that I'm celebrating now." That emotional certainty creates a magnetic pull that accelerates physical appearance. Joy operates similarly. When you're joyful in anticipation, you're vibrating at a frequency that abundance naturally resonates with. These aren't superficial positive emotions you're trying to manufacture. They're the natural byproducts of genuine faith that knows something invisible is becoming visible. Most people get this backwards. They think they'll be grateful after they receive, joyful once circumstances change, expectant when they see some evidence. But that sequence keeps them perpetually waiting because those emotions are actually the prerequisites for manifestation, not the results of it. The journey from doubt to certainty requires making a decision to feel prosperous before you see prosperity, to experience abundance in your emotional body before it shows up in your physical reality. Behind the scenes, when your emotional frequency matches your verbal declarations and your internal beliefs. You create perfect coherence, and coherence is the secret to rapid manifestation. What I want to explore next is the specific practice that generates these emotional currencies consistently, because feeling grateful and joyful isn't always natural when circumstances look contrary to what you're believing for. If you're ready to align your emotions with your declarations, write in the comments, "I feel it before I see it." There's a principle that sounds counterintuitive until you understand how manifestation actually works, and it's this: you must feel prosperous before you become prosperous, not after. Before. Most people are waiting for their bank account to change so they can finally feel abundant, waiting for the opportunity to arrive so they can feel confident, waiting for physical evidence before they allow themselves to experience the emotional reality of blessing. But that sequence keeps them trapped in a perpetual waiting game because the universe doesn't work that way. The feeling state comes first. The internal experience precedes the external manifestation. This is why you must see yourself as blessed before the blessing appears physically. It's not pretending or denying reality. It's understanding that the invisible realm where blessings originate responds to your internal state, not your external circumstances. There's an ancient promise that captures this perfectly. According to your faith, it shall be done unto you, not according to your circumstances, not according to what you currently see, according to your faith, which is essentially your internal conviction, your ability to feel and believe something before evidence confirms it. The transformation this requires is learning to live from the end result rather than from your current situation. Behind the scenes, when you genuinely feel prosperous, when you carry yourself with the confidence of someone already blessed, when you make decisions from abundance mentality rather than scarcity fear, you emit a frequency that magnetizes corresponding physical experiences. Your emotional state literally becomes the blueprint that reality conforms to. The impact of mastering this is that you stop being a victim of circumstances and become a creator of them. You recognize that your inner world is actually the causal realm, and your outer world is simply the effect reflecting back what you've been internally broadcasting. Now here's where everything we've been discussing converges into one critical requirement for sustained manifestation, and it's what separates people who experience occasional breakthrough from those who live in continuous abundance. Your inner world must agree with your declared abundance. Complete agreement, no contradiction, no hidden doubts undermining your spoken faith. Your thoughts, your words, and your emotions must all speak the same prophetic prosperity language. When these three elements harmonize perfectly, you create what I call complete alignment. And complete alignment is unstoppable. Think about it like an orchestra. If the strings are playing one melody, the brass is playing another, and the percussion is doing something completely different. You don't get beautiful music, you get noise. But when every instrument is playing the same composition in perfect harmony, something magnificent emerges. That's what happens when your internal components synchronize. Your thoughts aren't sabotaging what your mouth is declaring. Your emotions aren't contradicting what your mind believes. Everything is unified, coherent, broadcasting the same clear signal. Most people live in internal chaos. They declare abundance while thinking scarcity. They speak confidence while feeling fear. They claim belief while emotionally expecting disappointment. That internal discord creates static that prevents clear transmission between the invisible and visible realms. The journey to complete alignment requires brutal honesty with yourself about what's really happening in your inner world. You have to root out every hidden belief that contradicts what you're declaring. Challenge every fearful thought. that undermines your confession, and cultivate emotional states that support rather than sabotage your faith. What I want to reveal next is the specific practice that creates this internal agreement consistently, because achieving it once during a powerful moment is one thing, but maintaining it daily amid contradictory circumstances is where real mastery develops. If you're committed to creating complete internal agreement, write in the comments, "My inner world agrees." There's a moment in every person's journey where a fundamental shift occurs, and it's the difference between living in constant struggle and operating in effortless flow. That shift happens when you stop chasing wealth and start creating it. Most people spend their entire lives in pursuit mode, running after opportunities, desperately seeking the next break, hoping someone will finally notice them and give them a chance. That exhausting chase is what happens when you're operating from lack consciousness. But divine alignment flips the entire dynamic. You're no longer waiting for opportunities to appear. You're commanding them into existence. You're no longer hoping doors will open. You're decreeing that they must. This transformation from chaser to creator changes everything about how you move through the world. Your energy shifts from desperate to confident. Your decisions come from overflow thinking rather than scarcity fear. Behind the scenes, people can feel this shift in you even if they can't articulate it. You start attracting opportunities instead of pursuing them because you're broadcasting a completely different frequency. The impact of this mindset change is immediate in terms of how others respond to you, how circumstances arrange themselves around you, and how resources begin flowing toward you rather than away from you. Now, here's where this gets truly exciting, because what I'm about to explain is the secret to sustained, continuous prosperity rather than occasional windfalls followed by drought. When you achieve genuine alignment, you're not just unlocking a one-time blessing, you're activating what I call the covenant of abundance. And this covenant operates as a perpetual cycle. It's self-sustaining, self-multiplying, continuously generating increase. Think about it as setting a divine flywheel in motion. At first, it takes intentional effort to get it spinning, but once it reaches a certain momentum, it begins generating its own energy and becomes nearly unstoppable. This perpetual cycle functions through a beautiful rhythm, giving and receiving, sowing and reaping, declaring and manifesting. These aren't separate actions. They're interconnected movements in one continuous flow. When you give from alignment, you're not depleting your resources. You're actually creating space for more to flow in. When you sow seeds with faith, you're not losing what you planted. You're multiplying it exponentially. When you decree with authority, you're not just speaking words. You're manifesting corresponding realities. The cycle perpetuates itself because each action generates momentum for the next. Most people never enter this cycle because they're trying to receive without giving, reap without sowing, manifest without decreeing. They're attempting to extract from the system without participating in its rhythm. But when you understand how the cycle works and position yourself within it, abundance becomes your natural state rather than an occasional exception. Behind the scenes, spiritual laws begin working in your favor automatically because you're operating in harmony with them rather than against them. The journey from sporadic blessing to continuous flow requires trusting the cycle enough to keep participating even when you don't immediately see results. Every act of aligned giving creates future receiving. Every seed sown in faith creates future harvest. Every decree spoken with authority creates future manifestation. The transformation that happens when you commit to this perpetual cycle is that financial anxiety disappears, replaced by confident expectation because you know the system works, you've seen it work, you're actively participating in it, and you trust its rhythm. What I need to address next is the specific obstacle that prevents most people from maintaining momentum in this cycle, causing them to drop out just before breakthrough arrives. If you're ready to enter this perpetual cycle of increase, write in the comments, "I activate continuous flow." There's a level of prayer that most people never reach because they've been conditioned to see themselves as powerless petitioners rather than authorized legislators. And this higher level is what separates those who occasionally get answers from those who consistently shape reality through their words. Prophetic decree is the highest form of prayer because it moves completely beyond asking into commanding. This isn't about being demanding or disrespectful toward the divine. It's about understanding that you've been given a specific role and authority. You're functioning as both king and priest, someone authorized by heaven itself to legislate divine will into earthly manifestation. Think about the difference between a citizen requesting something from government and a legislator actually writing law. The citizen hopes their request is heard and considered. The legislator speaks and systems respond because they carry positional authority. That's the transformation that happens when you shift from regular prayer into prophetic decree. You're no longer hoping heaven hears you. You're speaking with the confidence that comes from knowing your words carry legislative weight in the spiritual realm. Behind the scenes, forces that govern manifestation recognize this authority and respond accordingly, not because you're special, but because you've stepped into your rightful position. Now, here's the critical element that determines whether your decrees actually carry this kind of power or fall flat, despite using all the right words, and it has everything to do with the source from which you're speaking. Decree's authority doesn't come from technique, volume, or even the specific phrases you use. It comes from identity. This is the hidden truth that changes everything. When you truly know who you are, when you've internalized your position as an heir rather than a beggar, as a child of the Most High rather than an outsider hoping for scraps, your words naturally carry a different resonance. They vibrate at divine authority's frequency because they're emerging from someone who understands their place in the cosmic hierarchy. Most people speak from desperation, which broadcasts, "I don't believe I have access. I'm not sure this will work. I'm hoping someone takes pity on me." That frequency gets ignored because it carries no authority. But when you speak as an heir, when your words emerge from the settled conviction that you belong in the throne room, that you have legal rights to everything in your Father's house, that your voice matters because of whose child you are, everything changes. The atmosphere shifts, creation responds. Circumstances begin rearranging themselves because they're encountering authority rather than wishful thinking. The journey from beggar consciousness to heir consciousness is the most important transformation you'll ever undergo, and it requires dismantling years of religious conditioning that taught you to grovel, apologize for existing, and never presume you have any real access or authority. Behind the scenes of your visible struggle, there's been an identity crisis. You've been operating from a false sense of who you are, and that false identity has produced false results. But when you embrace your true identity, when you recognize that divine DNA flows through you, that you're not an accident, but a deliberate creation with specific authority and purpose, your decrees stop being desperate pleas and become authoritative commands. The impact of this identity shift ripples through every area of your life because you're no longer approaching anything from powerlessness. Your decisions reflect confidence, your relationships reflect worth, your financial dealings reflect abundance mentality, and most importantly, your words begin carrying weight that reshapes reality around you. What I want to explore next is the specific barrier that keeps most people trapped in beggar consciousness even after they intellectually understand their heirs and how to break through it permanently. If this identity shift is happening in you right now, Write in the comments, I speak as an heir. There's a restoration that happened that most people are completely unaware of. And understanding it changes everything about how you view your relationship with the physical world. Go back to the very beginning of human existence. There was an original mandate given to humanity, dominion. Not domination through force, but authority to govern, shape, and steward creation itself. That dominion was compromised through disobedience, and for generations, humanity operated under limitation, lack, and powerlessness. But something profound happened through Christ's work. That original dominion was fully restored. This isn't just theological concept. This is practical reality with tangible implications for how you live right now. Your words are the primary instruments through which you exercise this restored dominion. When you decree wealth, you're not begging creation to cooperate. You're commanding it to obey what's already been established in the spiritual realm. This is why aligned decrees work. They're not suggestions or requests. They're the exercise of legitimate authority over the material world. Behind the scenes, when you speak from this place of restored dominion, you're engaging the same power that was always meant to be humanity's inheritance. The earth itself was designed to respond to human authority, spoken in alignment with divine will. The transformation this understanding creates is staggering. You stop seeing yourself as victim of economic systems, market fluctuations, or circumstances beyond your control. You recognize that you actually have dominion, real, functional authority, to speak to your financial reality and command it into alignment with heaven's abundance. The impact of this revelation is that fear loses its grip. How can you be afraid of lack when you understand you have dominion over it? How can scarcity intimidate you when you know you carry authority to decree abundance into manifestation? The more you know His will, the more precisely you can decree. Think about it. If you're constantly guessing what heaven wants, your decrees will be vague, uncertain, tentative. But when you've spent time in genuine communion, when you've cultivated real intimacy with divine intelligence, you begin sensing what's already been established in the spiritual realm. Your decrees become laser-focused because they're emerging from revelation rather than speculation. Behind the scenes, this relationship depth is what separates people who occasionally see breakthrough from those who consistently legislate reality through their words. Most people want the power without the relationship, the authority without the intimacy. They want decree formulas that work like magic spells. Say these words in this order and get these results. But that's not how divine authority functions. It flows from connection. The transformation that happens through genuine intimacy is that you stop trying to manipulate spiritual laws and start partnering with divine intention. You decree with confidence because you know what heaven has already decided. Your words carry weight because they're backed by relationship, not just technique. Now, here's the ultimate paradigm shift that occurs when all these elements we've been exploring come together, and it represents the highest level of spiritual maturity you can reach. Prophetic decree transforms prayer from reaction into creation. Most people pray reactively. Something bad happens, so they pray. A crisis emerges, so they cry out. They're constantly responding to circumstances, always playing defense, forever trying to fix problems after they appear. But when you step into prophetic decree authority rooted in relationship, everything inverts. You stop reacting and start creating. You become what I call a divine legislator, someone who governs the flow of heaven into earth through aligned speech. You're not waiting to see what happens and then responding to it. You're speaking realities into existence before circumstances even form. You're establishing spiritual structures that determine how physical reality will unfold. Behind the scenes, you've shifted from being a victim of circumstances to being an architect of experience. The impact of This transformation cannot be overstated. Every area of your life begins reflecting intentional creation rather than accidental occurrence. This isn't about control or manipulation. It's about stewardship. You recognize that resources flowing to you aren't just for personal consumption. They're assigned to kingdom purposes and divine assignments that extend far beyond your individual benefit. You're governing abundance not for selfish accumulation, but for strategic distribution according to heaven's agenda. The journey from reactive prayer to creative decree, from circumstantial victim to intentional creator, this is where you step into the fullness of why you were created. You're no longer just participating in life, you're actively shaping it through words that carry the authority of heaven and the precision that comes from intimate relationship with divine will. What I want to reveal in our final moments together is the practical application that takes everything we've discussed and distills it into a practice you can implement immediately to activate this entire system. If you're ready to shift from reaction to creation, write in the comments, "I create through decree." If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, I want you to know that wasn't by accident. The fact that you're still here, that something kept you engaged through all of this, tells me you're ready for this level of understanding. You're not just casually curious, you're genuinely positioned for a breakthrough. And that positioning is what brought you to this moment. I create content like this because I know there are people out there who are tired of surface-level teachings that never produce real results. You're looking for substance, for truth that actually transforms rather than just inspires temporarily. If that resonates with you, if this is the kind of depth you've been searching for, I'd love for you to subscribe to this channel. There's so much more we're going to explore together. Practical wisdom, spiritual principles that actually work, revelations that shift your entire reality. And listen, if this message landed for you, if something clicked while you were watching, do me a favor and drop a comment saying, "This was meant for me." I love seeing who's connecting with this material, and honestly, your engagement helps this reach more people who need to hear it. Plus, if you found value in what we covered today, hit that like button. It's a simple thing, but it tells me this content is serving you well. Now there's something else I need to share with you that builds directly on what we just covered. There's a video right here that takes this understanding even deeper into practical application. Click and continue with me over there. I think you're going to find it's exactly what you need next on this journey.